Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin, and on my sewing table, I show you some of my works in progress, and I always have a lot to say about it, so stay with me. I love these on my sewing tables because I get to show you guys what I've been working on. And if you've looked behind me, you are already seeing something new. That reminds me of the Ratatouille, where he says, "The customers are asking, what is new? What did you tell them? I told them I would ask." And so here we are. So you may have seen this block. It has made quite the appearance on my channel. It started in the fabric pull video where I talk about coming up with a colorway or fabrics that go with your plaids. And I picked this particular madras because it is an uneven, complex plaid, and I had had a difficult time figuring out how to put it in a quilt project. And so I pulled some fabrics, and as I pulled them together, I really liked them. And what I said in the video was that I found it compelling and interesting. And I said in that video, and I quote, "I have no need to make this particular quilt." And that was kind of the end of that. And I put the fabrics away, except for the plaid, because I had been thinking about how to cut plaids and whether it matters if you try to match the plaid exactly in your block. And that kind of led to the Plaid Perfection video where my friend Jennifer and I made two of the same blocks in two different fabrics. This was one of them. And she did it matching fussy cut, every block matching each other. I got the fun job of just cutting right through the fabric, just like and sewing it up. And this was the block. And so it has made quite the appearance in videos as of late. And after we filmed that video, the one about whether perfection is worth it, it's not. I mean, if it is to you, it's really okay. But for the vast majority of us, it's not worth the time and energy. I just had this block on my sewing table. So it's a good thing it's on my sewing table. And it was just so beautiful to me. And I went to put away all the fabrics that I had out for the plaid videos and saw that fabric pull that was sitting there. And at the time that I did the fabric pull, I had no block with it. So I pulled it out and looked at it again and thought, that would be really, really gorgeous. And that block is really fun to make and comes together really quick. And so from that moment on, I started making these blocks, and kind of in secret, because I really didn't need another quilt project. I really didn't need to start another quilt. And I have learned if I show an additional block or talk about that I've made another block, you guys are so awesome, and you pay attention and you say, "Whatever happened to that?" Whatever. Or, "How's the so-and-so coming?" And some of you do "You're starting another quilt." And so I thought, well, let me just make a couple of blocks and see how it goes. See if I even want to stay with it. And I did. And they're behind me. And every single block from this quilt pattern, which is Magnolia, by the way, Magnolia quilt pattern from Chelsea Stratton. And every one that I made, I just loved. And then as I started putting them together, and I have to stop and look on the, because it's so pretty, on the design wall, I liked it even more. So from the fabric pull, I did use those fabrics. I have added in a couple extra. So the bright turquoise blue in the block that you see behind me is actually one of those linen shirts from a thrift haul that I was just beside myself with joy that I had found such a vibrant linen quilt. And as I was putting the blocks together and realized that that light seafoam block that's behind me is in the print in the plaid. Sure enough, there was a darker turquoise in the plaid. So there's the lighter one that's kind of a little stripe, and then there's the much brighter one. And I felt like that linen brought that out. And then I don't know if you also remember, I had a chartreuse linen shirt that I think I remarked something like, I have no idea what I'll use this in. Well, I'm actually have a block that I'm working on with it in it. So there will be 16 blocks in total. I'm almost there. So I got pretty far down the road with it before I brought it out to show you. And then in the fabric pull video, I talked about how there's actually a very bright pink. You can see it in this particular block. But the other colors were more jewel tones, and I felt like if I went with that pink, it would be too bright. So I chose that kind of lipstick pink, and it's a shirt for the cornerstones, and I think it kind of gives it some contrast from a color standpoint and a little interest in those corner pieces. So that is the secret project number 2, and you may be wondering what I'm going to do with this quilt. I have a very dear friend that I love very much, and she is a wonderful friend. She is one of those friends that will send texts and cards and remember my birthday. I'm not that friend. She is just a delight of a person, and when I started putting it together, her face just came to mind. And so I'm not going to tell you who it is because she watches. But I'm going to finish this up and make it for her. And I even already have a plan for the back, which maybe I'll hold that out until the next on my sewing table because I've got a little bit of time before I'm there. So I have an interesting backing, I hope, for this. And I've got the chartreuse block still to go. It's almost put together. And then 4 more blocks and I'll have the quilt top done. So that's exciting. And so that's it for that one. And now on to the next. So in between, when I just got this out, I had to turn around and look at the design wall again because I had not had the block. I did not have the blocks arranged in this particular configuration behind me until we got ready to do the video. And I just had to stop and look at it again. So I don't know. Anyway, this is the Trip Around the World quilt, and the quilt top is finally finished. And I was so close to finishing, and I ran out of background fabric. Y'all, again. So I ran out of background fabric and I had to wait for it to come because my local quilt store sold out of it. The nerve. And then I didn't actually do the math and figure out how much I needed. I was like, oh, I think a half a yard will be enough. It wasn't. So I had to order more background fabric. This would have been done 3 weeks ago if I had just planned well. But nonetheless, here we are. This is the finished quilt top, and you all have seen it up on the design wall. So you've seen the bright pink, lipstick, mulberry, navy part all together. But what you have not seen is all of the greens and blues together. And so the navy went into this one that this whole time, I still have a doubt whether it's black or navy. And it's got the kind of funky little diamonds, and then the blue paisley and the turquoise and so on and so forth. But what I want to show you is, because I'm just so pleased with it, just pleased as punch, is this green, the next to last one. And there are only 4 blocks, well, 4 9-patches in the whole quilt. And it was a very busy print. And what you can see, it was like a forest with little girls exploring the forest with their cat and flowers and trees. And so one's climbing a tree, one's swinging, And I wondered when I chose the fabric, I knew that it would tie these two greens together. Like I just instinctively knew that. Or I can look and and it matched. But I knew that when I cut it into small pieces, because the print was large, that there was a risk that I might lose some of the interest of the print. And also there's a lot of brown in it. And depending on how I cut it would be how it would, how it would shake out in these 9-patch blocks. And so what I did is I just laid it out and I cut the 2.5-inch strips. Then from the end, I cut the 2.5-inch squares, and then I laid them out on my dining room table. And what I found was, because even though it's a repeating pattern, it's kind of a large pattern, it was close enough that I ended up with 4 of the little girl swinging and 4 of the little girl climbing the tree. And I think I had 2 of the little redheaded girl sitting on the limb. And then I had 2 or more with the cat in it. And so what I did, I laid it out. And when I discovered that I had those, I made that the center of this 9-patch block. And then I made the little girl climbing the tree the center of this 9-patch block. So I did not fussy cut it, actually. It kind of looks like I did. But I just took what I had and I eliminated all of the ones that were predominantly brown because I wanted it to have mostly green. And then when I realized that I could come up with enough pieces to have those center pieces have the little girls in them. And then, as it often happens, when you do cut that long strip, you'll have a repeating segment. So the green leaves kind of repeat, the birch tree, what do you call that? Trunk. The birch tree trunks and branches appear. And actually, I'm going to open this up and show you. I'm not going to open it up all the way, it won't fit. So you can see this is probably the top of the quilt and this is the bottom of the quilt. And look how similar that is, but not exact, which makes it interesting. So she's here. She's just on the edge on this one. And then these pieces are kind of similar. These pieces are kind of similar. I literally did cut these long strips, cut them into 2.5-inch squares and laid them out on the dining room table and picked similar. And then here's our little girl swinging again. And you can just see there's just a lot of similarities there. And that's the way it is on all 4 corners. So in every corner, there's a little girl swinging in the center of a 9-patch. And in every other corner is the little girl that's climbing the tree. So I hope Brittany loves it so much because I think that may be one of the most fun things on this whole quilt. I do wish, after you do a quilt top, you learn something on every one. And I made this 9-patch strip around the world not square. I made it rectangular just because of the wonderful things he does. I don't know. I just decided to do it that way. And I really wish I had extended it out further because the greens and the blues kind of got short shrift on it. The bulk of the quilt is that really pretty, almost sunburst from the yellow, orange, and then into these really pretty pinks. But kind of there's some fun stuff out here to the edge. And I could really even add out to the side. But at this point, we're going to call it good. We're going to celebrate a finished quilt top. And now I get to decide what backing to put on it and what binding to put on it. And I have yet to fully commit to whether I'm going to quilt it or send it out to a friend or my local quilt store to have it long-armed. From our life busyness, I really should farm it out and let somebody do it. But I have an idea for it and I kind of am tempted. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So that's my 9-patch strip around the world quilt. So if you guys have been wondering where it's been, how far along it is, what's left is it's on to the next step. So backing and binding fabric choices next, and then that'll be on its way. So that's exciting. And then I have one more thing to show you on my sewing table. And it's another kind of surprising one. So stay with me. So in the comments of the last video, quite a few of you actually said, "What is that quilt behind you?" And I responded to you, "It's not a quilt yet." And I did not know to put the yet. This is a project that I started after my very first quilt. I made my first quilt out of men's shirts and basically scrap fabric that I had. And because I didn't use a lot of it, because there's so much fabric in men's shirts, I had all this extra fabric. Of course, I had the book, Sunday Morning Quilts, because that's where I got the pattern for that first quilt. And I just started looking through, and the one that is actually called Sunday Morning is a low volume quilt that uses, some people call these strings, long skinny pieces. And the pattern actually calls for these pieces to be sewn together. And then there's another wider piece that is perpendicular to this section. So I read through the whole pattern. Remember, I had only made my first quilt and liked the idea. And so I just cut a bunch of shirts up into skinny pieces of varying sizes and widths, and, pulled out scrap fabrics that I thought looked nice with it, and kind of just started following the directions. Because as resistant as I am and scoffing as I do, I actually really am compliant and I follow directions. So I sewed the blocks, and I decided I would do this piece that I keep motioning to that is not here, and I'll tell you about that in a second, as a darker French blue. And then you square it off to whatever size that is. I think it was 10 inches. I got them made, quite a few of them, as you can see, and I started laying them out on the bed because I was going to make a baby quilt out of it. And I just didn't like it. And I couldn't really tell you what I didn't like about it. I tried it with the ones with this piece all on the same side, and then I tried it alternating. I tried it in the windmill, so, rotating radially. And it was just too blue. It didn't read low volume. It read just blue, 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 blue. And it didn't have enough interest. And so on a whim, one day, I just went through and seam ripped all of the perpendicular pieces off because I loved just the blocks so much. And actually, my husband loved these blocks as well. And we just decided, I talked to him about it, of course. And I don't like the blue. He was like, "Well, take it off." Okay. So took them all off, and I put these in the box that's underneath my end table of my couch. And when we were getting ready to film the Managing My Whips video, I didn't want to spoil the secret about the Magnolia quilt pattern and blocks. And so we just tacked these up just to have something behind me that would be new that you guys haven't seen. I was surprised at actually how pretty it was, just lined up just like it is. And really had no intention of turning this into an actual let's move forward from here. But I wanted to show you some of them, and I wanted to show you also kind of what I've done. So the first thing is, in the directions, it says to cut into strips, and then if you have a hard time doing random, which of course I have a hard time doing random, put your pieces in a bag and then just reach in. Now, this has been in this bag for a long time, so they're really, really bad wrinkly. And then you just pull a strip out. And whatever you pull out, you're supposed to just sew this together. I'm doing it now as if we were doing it. Actually, wouldn't you know, this is coming out quite nice. But when I did this to start with, I pulled out, like, for example, this, which is just, to me, a little too close. So I would go Yeah, no, I don't like that one. I'm gonna get a different one. And I tried to get a mix of plaids and stripes, and then if I could manage it, at least one yellow. And you see how I'm now cheating. This is exactly what I did on these blocks before. I tried to have at least one yellow or green, just something with a little color. And then I tried to have one that had a lot of white in it. So that would have been an example. And then you just sew these together and trim them down to the size that they need to be. And I actually really enjoyed making them right up until I started sewing the perpendicular blues and then just lost all happiness. Oh, here's the, oh gosh. This is a picker's nightmare right here. Or maybe, maybe dream. But there you go. There's, if you wanted to see. And it just was too much blue. So, gosh, look at all that fabric that I cut. Guess I'll be using that in another project. I didn't even know that was in there. So this got shelved and this got wadded up and put back in here. And the block that I did actually sew together to see if I liked it, here it is. I had it like this. And I used it for free motion quilting practice. And so if you happen to make blocks that you go, I don't like that nearly as much as I thought I was going to, this is actually great use for it. So you can see I really have gone to town on it. And I can't remember why I cut that apart, but I have practiced and then gone back and practiced some more on top of the practice. So you can see how that was. So I wanted to show you a few of the blocks. We won't go through all of them because you don't want to be here with me all day. This one was a particular favorite. This fun fabric right here was just in my stash. I don't even know what I had it for. So that one I thought was really pretty. This one too. And this is very much not random. When I saw this orange and that kind of hot pink or dark pink, I thought it would contrast nicely. So this was a very calculated one. This one has that green kind of interesting plaid that I cut on the bias, did some skinny strips here. And in the Sunday Morning Quilt book and Sunday Morning Quilt pattern, the authors talk about sewing intentionally, like not making them straight. So you can see this is on the angle. They don't have to be nice and straight. And in fact, it gives it a little more interest when it is crooked. I had a hard time doing that. I would have a much easier time doing that now that I'm a little further down the road with my quilting skill and understanding of how that works. Look at that string. That's got to go. All right. This one was fun too. I liked these circles. I think I had this fabric for clothespin dolls. I think that was why I had that. And then this was from the girls' rooms when they were toddlers. And I just used a lot of different ones. There's some more of that plaid. This was my very own shirt that it got kind of thin and it didn't look very flattering on me because it's just too pale. So I cut up my own shirt and put that in there. Moral of the story is don't throw away your blocks because you might put it on the design wall behind you just for decoration and people go, that is beautiful, and it gets resurrected. I've actually gotten reinterested in this project and I've been thinking that what I might do is whip out my old Navy bag. Oh, it has a catbird on it. When I do chain piecing for some of my more official projects, just sew 2 or 3 of these and then put it back in its bag, in its little Ziploc bag, and hide away my ratty old Navy bag and keep rolling. And if it never becomes anything, that's okay. Or if I suddenly and desperately need a baby quilt for a boy, this would be a great one to just sew as many as I wanted together in rows and ta-da, all done. So yeah, if you're interested, I preach this book constantly and a lot lately. So maybe I'm beating a dead horse, but that was from the Sunday morning. It's actually the Sunday Morning Quilt from the Sunday Morning Quilts book. And if you haven't gotten it already, I encourage you to get it or check it out from your library. those are 3 out of the 13 works in progress that I have right now. Thanks for being with me. I hope that the next time I have it on my sewing table that I'll be even further down the road with my 9-patch trip around the world quilt. By then, hopefully it'll have backing either chosen or on it, and I'll bring out another one of my secret or small projects so that I can show you all of the things that I'm working on. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thanks so much for watching.